Good evening. I'm Susan Black, President of the League of Women Voters of Evanston, the sponsoring organization of tonight's forum. I'm pleased to welcome everyone here tonight to the Evanston District 202 School Candidates Forum. There are 3 board positions up for election with 4 candidates running for the positions. The term of office is for 4 years. We would like to thank the administration of the Evanston Township High School for generous donation of the use of the school facilities tonight, including the recording and broadcast of the forums on Channel 18 and the YouTube channel. Election Day is Tuesday, April 5th, and polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Early voting for Evanston residents begins on March 14th and runs through March 31st and takes place at the Evanston Civic Center located at 2100 Ridge Avenue. The hours for early voting are 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Our moderator this evening is Rita Kirby. Rita is a member of the Deerfield League of Women Voters, and we are pleased to have Rita here tonight. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports, opposes, or recommends candidates for any office. The League is not affiliated with any political party. The League's purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. We are happy to provide this service for the community. As a League member, I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership role such as this one that has a great impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you are interested in learning about how you can make a similar impact, I would encourage you to visit the website of our league, www.lwee.org, or call and ask to have a member contact you. Now our moderator will present the rules of the forum and begin the proceedings. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rita Kirby. I'm from the Deerfield League. I'm also involved in the Lake County League. The candidates all drew their names for speaking, for their speaking order. And that's how they picked it. And so before we begin, please turn off all your cell phones and other noise-making devices. And the sole purpose of this forum is to give a large number of District 202 school board voters the opportunity to hear the 4 candidates express their positions on the issues. They're Jonathan Baum, Jane Collerton, Mark Metz, and Scott Michelle. Please do not respond in any audible way to the audience, and please do not clap until the end of the forum. The candidates have drawn lots to determine the order in which they will be giving opening statements, and they will rotate the order of speaking. Each candidate is allowed 2 minutes to give an opening statement, 1.5 minutes to respond to the question, and 2 minutes for closing statements. Members of the League will act as timers using countdown cards visible to the candidates and to myself, and I will hopefully, not rudely, enforce the time limit. The first part of the forum will be some of the questions have been prepared by the League, and so we will start with those. And the second part will be from the audience. And so they have letters that will have cards for you and pencils. If you want a card, just raise your hand, they'll give it to you. And if you want to, then they'll pick up your question also. And so there's usually a large number or a number of questions on the same topic. And so we'll do our best to make sure all the questions are asked about the topics of great interest. So we will begin with our first question, and Mrs. Collerton.
Don't we opening statement?
Oh, yeah, well, the opening statement, sorry. Yes, you have a 2-minute opening statement. Sorry. Ronald?
I'm Jane Collerton. Am I working? Good. I want to thank the League for convening this forum, and thanks to the audience for your interest in participating. This is important work. I'm an incumbent, and I want very much to serve again. There's unfinished business in our school, and I want to help to get it done. Tonight you may hear candidates express many common aspirations about providing real access and opportunity for excellence to all our students, about closing the academic performance gap without compromise to high achievers, about toughening curriculum content across the boards, top to bottom, about assuring better synergy between District 65 and 202, about helping assure fiscal soundness, and about improving communications with and enriching participation by our community in the work that we do. And I'm for all these things. Who isn't? But I can tell you that board work is demanding. Change is hard to effect. It comes slowly. There are no silver bullets, no matter what we candidates promise. I hope tonight will provide a chance to assess qualifications to steward this work, to consider real experience, to consider depth of understanding of our many hard issues, to consider ability to work cooperatively but with appropriate independence with the administration, teachers, and other stakeholders, skill to participate, even lead at board level, to consider openness, good judgment, fairness, and patience, to consider deep commitment to our children, and to consider desire and ability to serve, serve, serve. We have a great superintendent, a highly qualified administration, a fine teaching staff, and we're headed in a good direction. So let's keep going and never forget everyone counts.
Thank you, Ms. Compton. Okay, Mr. Metz.
Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters for arranging this forum, and thanks to all of you for coming out to hear from us. 8 months after we were married, my wife Noreen and I chose Evanston as our home, and we've lived here for 31 years. We raised 3 children, all of whom matriculated from District 65 schools and ETHS. I was appointed to the D202 board 2 years ago to fill a vacated seat. Prior to that, I served as a volunteer in the community in a number of ways over the years, including a baseball coach in the Little League for over 13 years. I served as president of EBSA for 3 years. I coached boys and girls basketball at Dewey School and Nichols Middle School. I've been a board member of the City of Evanston Playground and Recreation Board for the last 8 years, including 2 terms as president. And I was a founding board member of the Evanston Township High School Foundation. I chaired the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Committee on Police and Firefighters Pension Funds 3 years ago. And right now I'm a volunteer baseball coach here at Evanston Township High School for the last couple of years. In my spare time, I worked, but that's unimportant. Evanston Township High School is enormously important to the overall well-being of our community, and it's vitally important that we keep it strong and improve it in every way we can, and that's why I'm running for the school board. I think the most important things we need to pay attention to are raising the bar for educational excellence. That means more rigor, greater supports for students, and higher expectations for achievement. And as our mission suggests, the objective should be to have every last student perform to his or her highest potential. We should preserve our financial health while protecting students from the ravages of these difficult financial times. And we certainly need to improve communication with our community in both directions. I look forward to talking about these topics more as the evening progresses.
Thank you, Mr. Metz. Ms. Long.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this event, and thank you all for coming tonight. I'm running for the District 202 board because ETHS faces great challenges, and I think that I can help to meet them. The biggest challenges, as I see them, are these. First, we have to help all of our students achieve their full academic potential by challenging every student, supporting every student, and guiding every student. We have to maintain the fiscal health of this district in tough economic times by scrutinizing every program and position to make sure we're getting the full bang for our buck. We have to coordinate ever more closely with District 65 in order to make sure that we provide a seamless educational experience to all our children. And finally, we have to make the District 202 board more responsive to constituents, more transparent in its decision-making, and more vigorous in its oversight of district operations. I believe that I bring a unique combination of perspectives to this task. First, I am steeped in this community. I'm a loyal ETHS alum and longtime activist in the community. Second, I am the parent of 3 current ETHS students and a middle schooler. In fact, I'm the only candidate for the District 202 board who currently has children at ETHS. This is important because, as Mayor Tisdall, a former longtime 202 board member, has said, you learn things at the kitchen table that you don't necessarily hear at the board table. Neither of them is completely true, but maybe between the 2 of them, you get something approximating the full picture. Third, I've spent nearly 30 years as a civil rights lawyer, representing victims of discrimination. I think that experience has honed my sensitivity to the issue of equity that is a core challenge for ETHS. Finally, I spent 4 years as a member of the District 65 Board of Education, so I know what it is to be a board member, and I've tackled the tough academic and fiscal issues that both districts share. This gives me a K-12 perspective rather than a 9-12 perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Baum.
Thank you.
Mr. Rochelle.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me and the rest of the candidates here. Thank you for taking your time out to be here. I'm a second-generation graduate of Evanston Township High School. I'm also the son of 2 retired Evanston educators. With that said, I am delighted to be here before you pursuing a position on the Evanston Board of Education. I myself have created my own career in education. I see this as an opportunity to combine not only a passion for education, but a wealth of experience in education myself, and bringing the 2 together to me is delightful, because I once sat in this room as a student. I walked these halls. I've worked in so many different professional educational arenas, and to come home and be able to work here at Evanston High School, again, is a treat. I hold a master's degree in education from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and I've spent the past 10 years working in educational policy. I currently serve as legal counsel to a number of school districts where I advise on issues such as special education compliance, discipline, and policy analysis. As a board member, I will strongly advocate for proactive communication. I will advocate for an aggressive outreach and communication program to better engage our stakeholders in the educational process. I believe that effective communication is proactive communication. Who are our stakeholders? Our stakeholders are our students, our teachers, our parents, our taxpayers, anyone who has an investment in the school district. Furthermore, I will advocate for effective accountability initiatives. The board must hold itself and the administration accountable to its stakeholders, as well as a rigorous academic curriculum in order to preserve Evanston's rich academic tradition. As a product of Evanston's honors curriculum, I will advocate to maintain our honors curriculum and build upon our high-level courses. Thank you.
Okay, now for our first question, and there will be your answer. We have 1.5 minutes response, and we will wait a minute until they. And the first question, we will start with Ms. Metz. What is the role of the school board member?
Well, the role of the school board member is primarily policy. It's the chief, obviously the elected officials that are directly responsible to the taxpayers. I like to liken it to a corporate structure where the comparison would be the shareholders of a corporation sort of equate to taxpayers and community members in Evanston. The administration would equate to the officers of a corporation who are under the direction of a board of directors, which of course is the same as our board of directors. So while we're not charged with the daily responsibility of running the school, we're certainly charged with the responsibility of setting policy. And it's important that board members understand the full weight of their responsibility with respect to policy and leave the day-to-day administration of the school to the administrators.
Thank you. Mr. Baum.
Well, I think the board member has 4 functions. Essentially what happens is that the administration of the school provides information, the board makes policy, and then the administration implements it. That means that the board has to be rigorous in demanding the best possible information for its policy making. And it means that on the other end of the decision-making process, that after it has made its policy, that it has to vigorously engage in oversight of the implementation of that policy. And the other dimension I would add to that, which makes a board different from a corporate board, is that it is an elected office, elected by the community, and it has an essential function to be the bridge between the community and the professional educators in both directions, communicating for the community to the administrators and communicating for the administrators to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Rochelle?
To build on what Mark said, the board is responsible, to the actual stakeholders in the community. The board not only sets policy, it is the board's responsibility to oversee policy, to take a critical eye towards policy in the school, and to be able to manage, not only manage the policy, but also be able to more or less rearrange when necessary, and be able to make sure our policy fits our school and the students, the teachers, as well as the taxpayers and parents. And so Mark has said a lot of that. I don't want to just repeat everything he said, but I'd like to go a little further with regard to the board's role in making sure the policy works, holding everyone accountable, especially the administration, and taking a very active ear towards the community, because the board is made of elected officials, the board is made of elected officials who are put in place by voters. The voters' voice shouldn't end on election day. The voters' voice should be heard by the board and taken into consideration with board decisions.
Thank you. Ms. Carlton?
I guess this is what happens when you're at the end.
Yeah.
You get to concur with what everyone else has said. But in addition, one of the major jobs that the board has is hiring and firing the superintendent. And I've actually participated in that job twice, not firing, but hiring. And that is it's huge. And it takes a long time. And I have to say that even though I didn't vote for Dr. Witherspoon when he came on the board initially, I'm very happy with him, and it's been a wonderful job he's done, and it's been wonderful to work with him.
Thank you. Okay, this is another question. The current decision to eliminate the freshman humanities honor track has been controversial. What is your view about the change in the humanities track, honors track, and plan to expand the change to include freshman biology?
Did you want to ask a question?
I just didn't quite understand the tail end of your question.
Okay.
The mic is not the speaker.
The current decision to eliminate freshman humanities honor track has been controversial. What is your view about the change in the humanities honors track and plan to expand the change to include freshman biology?
Thank you.
Well, I didn't make any secret of the fact that I opposed the change in the freshman humanities program because I thought it was not adequately researched and prepared, and the planning had not been done, and that it was oversold to the public. That said, I think that we have to try to make it work. We have to put all the resources into it that we can, particularly to make sure that differentiation and rigor actually take place. We also have to vigorously monitor and evaluate that program, and we have to do all the other kinds of things about improving education in ETHS that sort of have gotten sort of to the side while we focus on this issue, probably excessively. And finally, we have to send the message that this is not the beginning of the detracting of ETHS, that this is not the end of the ladder of opportunities that ETHS offers, and that it is simply a step on that ladder. With regard to biology, I would say that I could not support expanding this model until its success has been proven. At a recent board meeting, one of the administrators said it would be at least 3 years before we knew whether the humanities program was effective, and so I couldn't see expanding the model to another subject area or another grade level until it had been proven.
Mr. Rochelle?
I agree with the spirit of the humanities proposal. I liked what the end goal was to provide equity and provide opportunity for all students to have a very rigorous, challenging education. However, my initial reaction was to think back to when I was a freshman in the honors humanities courses. And my first thought was, these are things, these things that I pulled from this course are things that stuck with me my entire educational career. And even in my professional career now. My main concern was, are these things going to be there? Are they going to be there throughout the new program? And so, moving forward, like Jonathan said, we have to make sure this works, but we have to make sure that we maintain what the honors curriculum was. We have to maintain the expectation for all students to do well. We need to maintain the expectation that students are going to do the work, and they're going to be able to understand the work, and they're going to be better students for it. So moving forward, I think we need to be able to monitor this program, and as Jonathan said, it's going to take years in order to know this program works. With that said, I would have to have data in order to make a database and evidentiary decision to stand this to biology. I think that that's necessary in order to make sure it works for biology. We can't rush into it. We have to sit back and see what the data has shown us before we do that.
Thank you, Ms. Michelle. Okay, Mrs. Colleton?
I believe that the restructuring proposal is an excellent one, and I'm really looking forward to the implementation stage where we can really see what we've got. I don't think it's going to take 3 years because we can really make some evaluation after the first year. We're going to be looking for children more children taking honors classes than typically did before. That we can measure the very next year. We're going to look at how their grades were. If we see students who would normally be taking the course for regular, who are really doing well, we'll know that we've gotten it right. It is not a prelude to detracting Evanston Township High School. It really is access for students who normally would not be exposed to the opportunity to be with many other students taking it for honors. And it also, the other thing that I think is a lovely part of it is the plan calls for kids not getting honors just because they're in an honors class, but earning honors, and I think that's really good. The biology, we haven't even seen a proposal, so we really don't know what we're looking at yet.
Thank you. Mr. Nix?
Well, at the risk of simply rephrasing what Jane said, I should state at the outset that I certainly approved of the plan. I voted for it, and I disagree with what Jonathan said. It's an interesting observation, and I've heard it before, and it's still something I'm puzzling over, how we could prevent that. But I don't think that we were underprepared at all. On the contrary, I think that we were extraordinarily well prepared to make this change. And I don't think we oversold it to the community. On the contrary, from my perspective, it seems that we badly undercommunicated what we meant and what was really happening to the community. So, maybe it might be just a different way of looking at things. I mean, I certainly respect his point of view, but, from where I sit, the preparation was deep and long and well thought out, and that's why I voted for it, because I became convinced that we knew exactly what we were doing and what the result was likely to be. And I think that, we don't want to overstate what this is all about. I mean, this is about getting more freshmen on track and demanding more, and demanding higher rigor and more performance out of our students. With respect to biology, I'm going to remain open on that because I'm not in the habit of commenting on proposals I haven't seen yet, and we've got to see what the administration brings forward and what that looks like.
Okay, Mr. Lachelle, a good working relationship between the board and superintendent is critical to effective district management. How would you describe the current relationship, and what would you recommend for the future?
Are you asking what the relationship between the board and the superintendent is right now? I am.
Is it a good working relationship?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not on the board right now. Good Lord willing, I will be, but it's difficult for me to comment on that because I do not work with the superintendent one-on-one. I will say this, the board respects the superintendent. The board respects the superintendent's passion, and I think that's number one, that's necessary for that to be there. But I'm speaking from a limited perspective because I don't work with the superintendent right now.
Thank you. Mrs. Colleton?
I think we have a very good working relationship with the current superintendent, and I think he's a great leader. I think what we're trying to do is, particularly with the restructuring plan, is something that we've talked about for so long, and that is to draw more minority students into honors and AP work. And he's made a proposal that we think is very workable, and I couldn't be happier about it. I mean, I'm sorry that it's controversial in some people's minds, but I think we're doing something at long last that will prove to be fruitful, and I'm anxious for us to get started with it. So I think we have a really good, we're not drinking the Kool-Aid here, folks. We really have thought this through. We think that his leadership is excellent, and I think we're starting something that's really going to be beneficial to the whole community, not just the minority community.
Thank you.
That sign intimidates me.
It's not as bad as the wrestling clock.
Mr. Metz?
Well, I certainly have a great deal of respect for Dr. Witherspoon. If anybody thinks that he gets a free pass and a rubber stamp from this board, they would be sorely mistaken, and I'm sure he would tell you that in private. On the other hand, it should come as no surprise to anyone that on many issues the board does agree with Dr. Witherspoon. After all, it's the board that hired him just 3 years ago. I was not part of that board, but a good number of our board members were involved in that hiring practice, as James pointed out. And they hired him to do a job, and they selected him to do the job they wanted done. And so if there's Kool-Aid that's been consumed, to carry on the metaphor, I would say that it's the superintendent who has sipped on the board's Kool-Aid. And that would explain, I think, why the board seems to agree, because he's bringing us policies and procedures and the kind of changes that the board demanded.
Thank you. Okay, the next question for you will be to our Mrs. Collington.
Okay, one more.
Oh, come on. Sorry. Yes, okay.
I have very high regard for Dr. Witherspoon and the individual board members, and they seem to work together very well. I think, though, there's been a bit of a blurring of the roles, because each has their own independent role to play. And I think, to use a phrase, it's gotten a little too cozy. And let me give you an illustration. There was a recent board meeting where a presentation was made by a couple of administrators about a very important issue facing the district. And then the administrators, after the presentation, took questions from the board members. And two of the board members said that they didn't have any questions to ask because they had met privately with the administrators and had their questions answered to their satisfaction. Well, I don't think that's the way to do the public's business, because we don't know what the questions were and we don't know what the answers were. So I just think we need a little more sunshine, a little more transparency, a little more clear definition of roles.
Thank you. Okay, now it's your turn. Okay. ETHS has seen a variety of actions concerning students selling narcotics, getting intoxicated, and bullying via Facebook and texting to the point of death. As a board member, what would you recommend to the students, parents, teachers, and staff to educate and eliminate this type of behavior among students?
Well, that kind of behavior is not unique to ETHS alone.
No.
It has to do with being adolescents. And I think as their elders, whether we be parents or teachers or administrators, we have to tell them that that behavior we don't approve of it, and it's not good for them, and it doesn't help them. Dr. Witherspoon wrote a great letter last year. I can't remember what the incident was. What was the Facebook business? And he said it so well. He said to the kids, by mail, I guess it's online, this behavior will not serve you well in life. You really shouldn't do it. And I was so glad that he was absolute on it. He didn't equivocate at all. And I think that's what we as adults have to do. We have to tell kids we don't approve of that kind of behavior, and they should cut it out. And we had a lot of kids that responded very well to that. They did another Facebook entry. I can't remember what it was. It was something very positive, and people were connecting with each other and being kind to each other, which is what we want to have happen.
Thank you. Mr. Ness.
Well, yeah, I certainly agree. The adolescent mind and the adolescent behavior remains a mystery to some extent, but we don't know why they do some of the things they do. But clearly there are behaviors that are uncivil and are not, as Dr. Wilson suggested, going to serve them well in life. I think that we need a combination of education around those issues, and explanation, but also we need to set clear guidelines, clear rules, clear consequences, and clear expectations, and then remain consistent in the enforcement of those so that there are no surprises. I mean, I think kids respond well in general to consistency and clarity around messages and discipline and so forth, and I think we should certainly be providing that as an institution.
Thank you. Mr. Long.
Yes, well, we should certainly be expressing our adult disapproval, but I don't think we should expect that our expressing our disapproval is going to get very far. I think there do have to be consequences, and I think the clarity of offenses is important. It's very important to draw clear lines for the students about what is permitted and what is not permitted, and what will be punished and what will not be punished. And I think that I think there's a lot of promise in the whole peer justice notion, in which students are, because kids care a lot more about what other kids think about them than what adults think about them, as much as we might not like that. And so I think that that's an important component as well.
Thank you. Mr. Michelle.
Quickly, can you just restate the question?
ETHS has seen a variety of actions concerning students selling narcotics, getting intoxicated, and bullying via Facebook and texting to the point of death. As a board member, what would you recommend to students, parents, teachers, and staff to educate and eliminate this type of behavior among students?
Well, everyone has spoken about setting rules, having consequences, and those to a certain extent. Well, setting rules is relatively proactive. Setting consequences is reactive. Let's get proactive. Let's figure out let's go a level deeper with the kids. Let's involve them in the educational process. Let's get them more involved in Evanston High School. One of the beauties of the school is that students are involved. Those students who are heavily involved, and studies have shown this, those students who are heavily involved in extracurricular activities, whether it be sports, the arts, anything here, are going to be more focused on themselves and their schoolwork, and not as distracted enough to go into all the different internet and web distractions. I think number one, we need to be proactive about engaging students. The more students we have engaged, the less students we're going to have falling into these categories of doing those things. So I agree with everyone here when they say we need to have clear lines and we need to discipline, consistently. But let's go a step further. Let's let a lot of these kids, a lot of this is cry for help. Let's go in and give them the attention that may keep them from going the next step into bullying or anything like that. I mean, I wasn't in school during the internet age where Facebook and all these things were so prevalent, but I can only imagine what kids go through now when something, this is going to be on YouTube tonight. Something embarrassing happens, it goes on YouTube, it goes on Facebook, it goes viral. We need to prepare these kids for that sort of behavior and those sort of consequences.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Nance, this question is for you. Cooperation between District 65 and District 202 is essential for students to succeed when attending Evanston School. Comment on the status of the relationship and whether you think the district should be consolidated.
Well, I think the relationship between the two districts is, I would characterize as improving. I think there is more collaboration going on today than there was in the past, at least in recent years in the past, going back, say, the last 10 years or so. I know there's collaboration department by department. There's things like walkthroughs being done where teachers and department chairs are walking through and visiting classrooms actually in the opposing district to learn what goes on there, so that at ETHS they can see how the students are being prepared for the curriculum they're going to face in high school, and the D65 teachers are able to see what will be expected of students and how they're taught when they get to the high school. So that kind of thing is all, I think, very good and very useful, and I'm very much in favor of expanding our cooperation and collaboration with District 65 in order to better prepare students right K through 12. We do need, as has been suggested by many, I think a more seamless approach. With respect to consolidation of the two districts, if Governor Quinn has his way, that may not be a choice that we'll make. But aside from that, I think it's probably something we have to study. It comes up a lot. I think it's worthy of study. From my perspective, the first thing I'll be looking for is a definitive advantage for our students. That's the first thing I want to know about, is how will our kids benefit from that change?
Thank you.
And then the money would be the next thing.
Mr. Baum.
It seems to me that the test of the quality of the relationship between the two school districts is to view it through the eyes of one of our students. The question is, if you were a student in our schools, do you feel as if, as you pass from pre-K to 12th grade, that you are in one school system? I don't think so. I think we have a long way to go to get to that point. Can we do it without consolidation? I hope so, but I don't know. And I think it does have to be educationally driven and then fiscally tested. But the kind of thing that makes me think we might need consolidation is that there was a joint board meeting of 65 and 202 in January, and one of the board members asked about the lack of sort of alignment between the districts on testing, on assessment, and said it frustrates the coordination on curriculum if you don't agree on what tests to use and what they measure. And one of the administrators said, well, we're working on that, but we are two different districts, so there's only so much we can do. And that was the best argument for consolidation I ever heard.
Thank you. Mrs. Hamilton.
No.
Scott, I'm sorry, I'm leaving people. Scott.
The consolidation of the district is something that it's going to, Governor Quinn has made one of his, one of his priorities to consolidate districts. So we have so many in the state. Skokie has 5 districts alone. Evanston has 2 districts, and right now I think the districts are working better than I've seen in recent times. They're working well together. Would consolidation benefit the students? That's the first question we have to ask. It's just to mention that we need to balance the educational benefit and the financial benefits. Well, there are some financial benefits and some financial problems with consolidation that we need to hash out. We need to sit down and have the conversation. Once again, we need to be proactive in our communication with the community to see what are the real issues, because there are a lot of layers to this debate that go beyond what most people just assume. You deal with the disparity in pay. You deal with the fact that I think there are 5 unions in this building alone. Consolidating districts with that many unions may create a financial nightmare in itself. But again, when we have the conversation, we need to balance the educational benefits with the financial benefits.
Thank you. Ms. Compton.
Well, everyone said it very well, I think. I do also agree that the relationship between 65 and 202 continues to improve. We have continued conversations and opportunities to work together, which we're acting on. Consolidation is I was reading an article recently about consolidation, and it suggested that consolidation is an issue that emerges whenever we're in financial straits, because it looks like a way to save some money. And there are some problems in it. The parity in salaries is only one of them, but it certainly does deserve our attention and our focus. And I think that is going to happen in the next couple of months, that the districts are going to look at how would it benefit us to merge. But again, we have to look at how does it benefit our students. That's the most important thing. And then if we can actually, this article is interesting. It's just a very complicated issue, but I'm willing to look at it, and I think both districts are.
Thank you. Okay, this question, what motivates you to want to become or remain a board member? And we start with Mr. Vaughn.
I guess my primary motivation is I love ETHS. I have loved ETHS since I entered it as a freshman more than 40 years ago. And I feel that I have an opportunity here to pay ETHS back. More than any school I've gone to, is literally my alma mater, the mother of my soul. It made me who I am, and I have now accumulated certain skills and experience that I can give to the benefit of ETHS, and that's what I want to do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rochelle.
I, like Jonathan, I'm a graduate of this school, but, I love ETHS because it has not only educated me, but it educated my father. It's employed both of my parents. I woke up every morning as a child seeing my parents get dressed and go to work to come to this building. My parents were here. My mother was here when I was here as a student. My father was an educator in the District 65 around that point. I grew up seeing pictures of my father playing basketball in Beardsley Gym. And to this day, he tells me that he was still a better player in Beardsley than I was. Whether or not who's better, it doesn't matter. But my roots in this community are deep. And I have been fortunate to have a career in education. For the past 10 years, I've been working in education and researching these policies that affect this school right now. And I've been giving my services to so many different communities in a professional and academic capacity. Why not give them here in my own community? Why not come home and take everything that I've learned and make sure that I'm giving all I can to the community that's raised me? Jonathan said it as well. This place affects you. It does. My time at Evanston has shaped me as not only a student, but a professional, as a person. There's so much to Evanston that the rest of the world does not have. I've been a lot of places, I've seen a lot of communities. This place is unique, and I credit its uniqueness with making me who I am today. And I cherish the opportunity to give back to it.
Thank you. Mrs. Collington.
My husband and I have lived in Evanston for 41 years. Our 4 children went to Evanston Public Schools, and all 4 of them graduated from ETHS, and it was a great experience for them. Having been on the board for such a long time, I continue to get excited by the work that we do. I really feel that it's a way of, the service is a way of shaping our communities, shaping the citizens of our community. And that, I just get a thrill out of that. And I was a preschool teacher at Carroll Valley Montessori School for 32 years, and occasionally children come through Evanston Township High School who I had as students. And you better believe that's a big kick to see kids I started and then see them finished and polished. So part of it is a little bit of self-satisfaction for me, the service that I do. But I also think we all need to serve somewhere, and I'm really, I think, well suited to this service.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Well, I don't want to make too big a point of it, but throughout my adult life, I've really felt like an obligation to serve the community. I think everybody has an obligation to provide some service to the community in which they live. And I think that there's evidence of that in the long litany of things I went through in my opening comments about all the various volunteerisms. And I did things that were appropriate at each stage of my life. And now it just feels like working here at this high school on the board is good work for me to be doing. And part of that is driven by, as I said earlier, the central role that this institution plays in Evanston. I think that this high school is more important to Evanston than most high schools are in their community. It's tied very closely to the well-being of our community. And it's an important place. And as I got to know it real well, sending 3 children through here, there's just so many good things going on here, and yet so much we need to do that it seemed like, I could add a voice and contribute. I think that my business background is needed on the board, and we have a lot of very talented people from all walks on the board, but by their own admission, most of them don't have a lot of expertise in finance or in business, and I think that's a critical thing right now as we go through tough times. And basically, the work we're doing feels unfinished to me. I've only been there 2 years, and I'm not ready to walk away. We've started some very great things, and I want to finish it.
Thank you. Mr. Ong, this question is for you. ETHS budget is in deficit. What do you see as your role in solving this financial problem?
Well, in a sense, the board has the ultimate responsibility because we are the financial stewards for this community. Fortunately, we don't have to crunch the numbers ourselves. We have outstanding financial management at ETHS, but it's going to be a very difficult time. And it's not simply a question of doing math. It's also a question of applying values, because there's very little we can do on the revenue side. We're pretty much at the mercy of the state and the larger economy. So we have to focus on the expenditure side, and we have to make cuts. And that process of making cuts, we obviously will have recommendations from our educational professionals, but at the end of the day, we, members of the board, have to apply the values on behalf of the community that we represent. And those are very tough choices, as I've said before. Usually you're not choosing, making cuts between the good and the bad, you're choosing between the good and the good. I mean, it's all worth doing, it's all things we'd like to do if we had the money. But making those tough choices, which is something I have some experience with on the District 65 board, that's what the board is there for.
Okay, Mr. Michelle?
With regard to something Jonathan said, value-based judgments, they're going to be key. They're going to be very key because the state, we are at the mercy of the state. And as a board, we are going to have to take a hard, close look at every program and everything that goes on in this building, from our bids to the personnel, to make sure that we are making smart decisions when it comes to the budget and our finances. I believe the student experience here at Evanston High School is second to none. My priority will be to make sure that any adjustments made will have a limited or the least effect on the student experience. I think that's what makes Evanston High School what it is today, is the ability to have not only a great education, but the exposure to everything that Evanston High School gives you. And so when you talk about the value-based decisions, they're going to be tough decisions. Everyone in the state is doing it. Everyone across the country is doing it. But we're going to have to take a very hard look at the cuts we make and make sure that we do preserve the student experience and the educational standards of Evanston High School.
Thank you. Mrs. Collins?
I agree with Jonathan, and I agree with Scott. We've had 4 years of balanced budgets. We have a AAA bond rating, which is one shared by only 9 other districts in the state. And we have Bill Stafford, who is an excellent financial manager. But we're still going to have to make some cuts this year and next year in order to continue. It would be really nice if the state would pay us the money it owes us, by the way. If you have any ideas for that, I'd love to hear them. So we are going to have to make some cuts, and they will be difficult, and Jonathan's right, it's between the good and the good. But we've done it before, and we're going to continue to keep those cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. That's a phrase people like to use, but it's really important. And it may mean that we're going to have larger class sizes, which is too bad. I mean, it just makes what we're trying to do harder. So it's a great challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Lance?
Well, I'm, as chairman of the board's audit committee, I do have a kind of a bird's eye view or a close-up view of what our finances look like and what our projections will look like going forward. And we certainly face some challenges. And as others have implied, we certainly need to employ, and we do employ, values-based budgeting, which means keeping the cuts away from the core of what we do here. And to me, put as bluntly and as simply as I can, the core of what we do here is we put good teachers in classrooms with students so that teaching and learning takes place. And there's nothing more important that we do in this building than that. And that's what we have to protect from the ravages of these financial times for as long as possible and as best we can. Aside from that, I think we need to be very careful and very thoughtful about how we use capital, how we invest capital. It's important to understand the difference between the operating budget and the expense side of the budget and capital investments. A lot of people kind of blur those and don't quite understand the relationship. And it's important to understand how capital investments will impact the operating budget as years go by and how that will limit what we can do. We do have, as Jane pointed out, a AAA bond rating. That's great. We also have won consecutive awards for budget preparation by public bodies that only a very small percentage of institutions in the country earn. So, this is an area that I think I understand pretty well, and I think I can really help. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Rochelle, this question is start with you. How important is our fine arts classes in a high school curriculum, and how would you promote accessibility for all students to the fine arts in today's academic and budgetary climate?
Well, I'll take the first part. I believe the fine arts, the benefit to the fine arts transcend just the fine arts state. A student who is involved in fine arts, who understands and buys into the fine arts, is going to take that confidence and that work ethic, and it's going to transcend just that classroom into all classroom. I think that when I speak of the student experience, I think that fine arts are part of the Evanston student experience, sometimes even more so than athletics. When freshmen walk into this building, they are presented with a number of opportunities to get involved in the fine arts. And so those freshmen are having, their experience is based upon that. And being a student here, I saw it firsthand. I saw confidence levels rise. I saw kids become stars. I see my classmates on television now. That is something we cannot lose. We can balance our academic, and the second part of your question was how do we balance that? Again, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult with our upcoming budget cuts and the state's financial situation. But there's going to be tough. We have to balance things, but I'll be very hesitant to cut away from the arts because it is so integral to the actual Evanston student experience and what makes this school so great for me.
Thank you. Mrs. Collington.
I agree with Scott. It is integral to our operation. I think for a number of reasons, which he touched upon as well. We have kids who perform and who produce extraordinary work. And one of the things that's so beautiful about it is it really gives them a sense of connectedness to the institution. And it creates experiences that they long, long remember. We would want to preserve that for as long as possible and to the best of our ability because we really know it's important for kids to feel connected to the school and to build upon their growth in so many ways, in performance, in production of some of the beautiful things that are around this building. And I would like to say that if anybody hasn't been here to see some of our performances, they should. We have an orchestra, a band. The theater productions are fabulous, and many of them are as good as you'll see anywhere. And so we don't want that to go away at all.
Thank you.
A plug.
Mr. Banks.
Yeah, thank you. Passion drives performance. Show me a student that is passionate about the arts, about an activity, and I'll show you a kid that is likely getting good grades and doing well in school, more likely than not. And the whole idea of connectedness, I think so often it's the extracurricular, it's the arts, it's sports, it's music, whatever it is. It's that activity that really makes a kid want to get up and be on time to school and to do well in school and to keep grades up and all those things. And we've got to preserve that. We've got to have all avenues for all these kids to express themselves. The work they turn out is jaw-dropping. And as Jane said, if you haven't been over here and seen some of what these kids produce, you owe it to yourself. I mean, it's just inspiring, really. And we've got to protect that. But, that said, we're in tough times. And I think I said earlier, I talked about the core, protecting the core in the classroom, and that means a lot of things might suffer. So I think part of the solution is we've got to look to assets in the community that aren't necessarily just straight revenue, but other avenues to bring people into the building that can help with some of these things and don't impact our budget and allow us still to save money, but to preserve the arts and some of the other things we do here.
Thank you. Mr. Long?
My son was in a major theatrical production last spring here, and some friends of mine who are New Trier parents came and they were blown away. They said, "Oh, you could never get this good a production at New Trier," and made my week, made my month. But I think there was a question. Part of the question was about access, maintaining access to the arts. Was that right? And I think that.
How important is art, fine art classes in high school? Your curriculum, and would you promote accessibility for all
Accessibility,
students?
right. I think that's an important point because there's sort of two dimensions to the arts program or to the athletic program or any other program, which is sort of height and depth. That is, we clearly attain the highest heights with our fine arts programming. But if we're faced with budgetary choices, we have to maintain depth and we have to give strong fine arts experiences to every student because, as several people have said, this can be the key to their whole adolescence and academic experience here. So I agree with Mark. I think to the extent that we're going to maintain those peaks, we may have to look more toward private resources for that, and so that we can save more of our public resources for the depth of program that gives the greatest experience for the largest number of students.
Thank you. Mrs. Collington, this is your question to you. Given the school's orientation toward race and equality, do you see any problems with the push to get more students into AP classes? Some students have complained about AP class curriculum, especially in U.S. history, which focuses on what some view as white supremacist narrative.
Wow. Would you mind repeating that
Yeah.
again? That was a long question.
Slow.
Okay. Given the school's orientation toward race and equality, do you see any problems with the push to get more students into AP classes? Some students have complained about AP curriculum, especially in U.S. history, which focuses on what some view as white supremacist narrative.
No,
That's quite enough.
the winner gets to write history. It's an interesting question. I've heard a lot of complaints about AP classes, not that one in particular, but it does make sense in some aspect because the orientation often is European dominated. One of the things, not to avoid the question, but one of the things I have long tried to have happen here at ETHS is an African-based language, because I think that that's another way in which there's a lack of focus on the inclusion of African heritage programming here at Evanston Township High School. So I'm switching a little bit by not talking about U.S. history again, but it happens, and it's kind of amazing that it continues to happen in this day and age, that often it's a very narrow focus and it doesn't include the rest of the world. Now we have Mandarin Chinese as part of our curriculum at Evanston Township High School, which is great, but we don't have that many Chinese kids here. And I would really, really like to just go on record at this point saying once again that I really think we should have a language that reflects the heritage of more of our students. And that's in language.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Metz?
Well, it seems to me there's two parts to the question. One is about encouraging more kids to take AP, and I'm certainly in favor of encouraging more students to achieve at their highest level. And if that means, and I think it does, that more students could be taking AP classes, then certainly that's something I think we should be striving for. And indeed we are. Curriculum should be relevant and rigorous. And to the extent that our curriculum is not relevant or historically accurate, we should be looking real hard at that curriculum as we do every year and change it. I'm not aware of the specific complaint that you cite, but I think it's true that for any of our curriculum, we need to review it constantly and kind of hold it to a very high standard and constantly look for ways to improve it. My goal with all of this would be to increase demand for more honors and AP classes. And if we're successful in changing the culture of the school to one where higher performance is expected not only by faculty and staff and parents, but when students begin to expect higher performance of each other, and this truly becomes a community of learners in a more intense way than it is now, then I think you'll see more kids taking AP, we'll have more demand, and we can offer more classes and more sections and more subjects.
Thank you. Mr. Rochelle?
I agree with Mark. I want to see as many students in our honors and AP courses as possible, regardless of race, size, shape. Evanston High School has a great level of diversity with regard to our student body. So any proposal or anything we can do to increase the number of students, not just white and black, but any student going into our AP courses, I believe we need to look into it. This conversation needs to be had. When it comes to the curriculum, I think focusing on, I'm not familiar with the issue of the U.S. history, but Evanston has a very vast curriculum where students are exposed to many different history courses. We have our global studies, we have world history, and to focus on just the U.S. history, I would like to look at all courses to make sure a student has the opportunity to study all history. And if there is a problem, I'd like to look into it, but my first inclination is that there is a very, very large course offering here for students who want to learn different histories, if not just U.S. history. And so, again, it's a conversation I want to have, but I don't know exactly what the issue is with the U.S. history course.
Thank you.
Dr. Jonathan.
Oh. Yes, Mr. Baum, yes.
I agree with you. There are two parts to this question. And yes, I would like to see more students in AP, but I'd also like to see more students that are prepared for AP. I've had conversations with faculty members who are concerned, and I'm not talking about honors versus non-honors or straight honors, across the board, that we need a higher level of rigor, which means that more of our students are actually ready for AP, even students coming out of so-called straight honors classes. So better prepared, more in AP, and we want them to perform well in AP. We don't want just them to be in AP, we want them to perform well. On the history, I haven't reviewed the history curriculum, except what I've seen from my kids in freshman and sophomore year. But I have to say that, that's a very harsh indictment of a team of professional educators of various races and national origins who have put together this curriculum, and I think before we can condemn our teachers on this, that we would really need to have some serious backup for that charge.
Mr. Metz, questions for you. ETHS has music groups and sports teams based on different levels of ability. What is wrong with tracking academic classes based on student ability?
Well, the sports model, since the question implies the sports model, it actually works very well, I think, to describe what we're trying to do academically here at ETHS. There are many sports that are no cut at the freshman level. There's a few sports, and we'd like for them to be all no cut. Resources aren't there to serve that many. Selecting kids for honors and AP in the 8th grade, to me, is like, and I'm on the baseball staff, as I mentioned, it'd be like going to the 7th grade, and between 7th and 8th grade, having a tryout, a test, if you will. And then, based on who the best players were at that point, we would assign them and say, all right, this group, you're going to be the varsity in 5 years, and the rest of you can go play sandlot or b-ball or something. And the baseball staff would laugh you out of the house if you tried that because it's a ridiculous concept. We know that baseball players develop at different rates, and it's too early, way too early, in 7th and 8th grade, and even in the freshman year, to begin to sort students for their future abilities at that age. And I think the same thing is true academically. I think what we need to do is bring them in here, put them on an even keel, and expect them to demand that they perform at a very high level and provide the supports they need to do that. So I think that the two models are completely consistent and make perfect sense.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Baum.
Now, I have to say, I've gotten very frustrated at hearing this argument against honors classes, that kids get picked in 8th grade and are stuck there for 4 years. Whose fault is that? That should not be happening. Kids should not be stuck. We should be guiding and moving kids through the system. So I just think that that's, it's kind of a straw man on this whole honors question. And as far as, the comparison to the athletic, I think that there are cut teams, there are no cut teams. We certainly don't have we're just praising the arts here. We don't have no cut fine arts. I mean, you have to audition, you have to be Broadway caliber to be in a lot of shows at ETHS. And same thing in music. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that the question really isn't about whether there's something wrong per se with having levels. I think the question is, how do you best help each child achieve their full academic or sports or artistic potential? Sometimes that's going to be in a mixed setting, sometimes it's going to be in a track setting, and I just think we have to be flexible and responsive to data in making those kinds of choices.
Thank you. Mr. Rochelle.
I like Jonathan's last answer. We need to be flexible. We need to be flexible because different situations work for different students. I think what we have now is a plan that we're going to closely look at to see if this works for every student to be able to achieve their maximum potential. I think to cut away all the fact from this question, I think the question is this going to work? Or is a mixed level course better than a straight honors course? We do not know yet. We are going to have to look at this program with a very critical eye. I say very critical eye because I have my own experience in an all honors course. And I know what I expect out of every honors course or course where a student can receive honors credit. So there's going to be a very critical eye moving forward on this program to see if it does what it said, what's been said that it's supposed to do. Now, do I want it to work? Yes, because if it works, every student gets the best. And we do not lose a freshman class, and we don't have any freshman students who are harmed by this program. But the data's going to have to show us. We're going to have to sit back and mine the data and look at the evidence to see exactly what this program is going to do for our students. And I hope it works. But if it doesn't work, we have to be able to look at it and say, okay, this didn't work. Let's go in and let's find a way to make it work. Because we owe every freshman student, we owe them the best education they can get. Because their freshman year is, in many ways, is going to dictate the rest of their high school career and college.
Mrs. Collington.
Now, the sports analogy is throwing me a little bit, but I do believe that even in a team effort, we're really supposed to be training kids for skills. And those skills have to be provided for kids, and that's what I think the restructuring plan is going to do. We really are looking at aligning skills that are appropriate for kids who are doing honors and AP work and that level. And I think it's really nice that it's humanities, because I think those are two sorts of disciplines that really contribute well to kids being in discussion and getting all kinds of concepts and ideas and sharing with each other. I think tracking may have its place, but it may be tracking was originally developed to sort kids out. These are the kids that are going to factories, these are the kids that are going to court or to medical school or something like that. And I don't think that we're really ready to say that kids have to be tracked so early and that determination has to be made so early. And I think that maybe it's true with sports as well. I mean, everybody isn't clever with the ball, but everybody can get better at it.
Thank you. Okay, this will be our last question to Mr. Baum. Comment on the district's effort to communicate with different constituencies. Can communication be improved?
It certainly can. I think that in some ways, institutionally, ETHS communicates very well. I mean, I've been very pleased as a parent, when something happens at the high school, or some event is coming up, or some, I think that the quality of communication, when a registration system breaks down, there's instant communication and with parents. So on that level, I think the communication is very good. I think that the communication problem is greatest actually with the board. And actually, it's institutionalized. A lot of people have complained about not getting responses to their emails when they send them to the board members. Well, that's not because our board is made up of rude or insensitive people. They're all wonderful people. But they have a lousy policy. They have a policy that says parents and community members should submit questions or communications for the Board of Education's consideration to the superintendent. If contacted individually, board members will refer the person to the appropriate level of authority, except in unusual situations. Well, I don't think that's the way a public body should operate. The board members are elected officials, and they have a duty to listen to and respond to their constituents. So I think that it would greatly improve communications if we actually had a free flow of information between board members and their constituents, and I would like to see that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Rochelle?
Yes, communication needs to improve. I think that so many times people think of communication as the board speaking to the community. Communication goes both ways, and it's very key for those of us who are looking to serve the community to hear the community, to involve the community in our decisions. Everyone on this panel has been meeting with small groups, having coffees, forums such as this. And I tell you, every time I have one of these forums or a coffee, I learn more than the people who are there. That's just a function of communication. That's a function of people giving and taking information, the give and take of information. And so, why do we wait until election season to have coffees and meetings with our constituents? If you've elected us, you have a right to give us feedback, so that when we come into a board meeting, we're not finding out what the public issues are at public comment. We need to walk in knowing what the issues are. We need to walk in knowing what, before we set up policy, before we even think of policy, we need to know exactly what the community is going to think about this. It's going to help us with our conversation in the future. Because one side knows the issues and the other side does not know the issues. We can't have a conversation. We have yelling back and forth. We need to have constructive, proactive communication, which is listening and speaking.
Thank you. Mrs. Collington?
Indeed, we do have to improve our communication mechanisms. And I think that some of the things that Jonathan has said and some of the things that God has said are true. I have long advocated a monthly or at least a couple of times a year communication to the general public about educational issues or educational trends or whatever we're thinking about doing, so that people aren't blindsided by something that we do. They have some awareness of it already. Maybe they weigh in as to whether they think it's a good idea or not. But there are all kinds of ways in which we communicate pretty well. There are all kinds of ways in which we communicate better. A lot of our stuff now is done online. And while that's great for people who have computers and have that skills to use a computer, we still are working on how to communicate to people who don't really use a computer, because there's a lot online. And one of the things that I was recently talking to somebody, and she was saying, why don't we have parents talking to parents more? Why don't we have a way that parents can come into school and learn about how to apply to college and learn about what other parents are doing? And I think that is a very good idea, because I think parents know a lot, and parents need to share it with each other. I think that would integrate our community better.
Thank you. Mr. Menace.
Yes, thank you. The policy that Mr. Baum read is from our board policy handbook, and interestingly, it's pretty much verbatim the recommended language from the Illinois State Board of Education. I read it, and as I interpreted it, what that refers to is when one might be speaking on behalf of the board, and there's a lot of cautions in there about that. There's nothing in that policy that prevents board members from having correspondence, email correspondence, and so forth with constituents and sharing ideas or meeting and anything. What we have to be careful of is that when we speak, we're not speaking for the board, we're speaking for ourselves. Only the board can speak for the board. That said, I agree with pretty much what everybody says. We've got a long way to go in how we communicate with this community and how we craft messages. The more recent upheaval over the freshman restructuring, I think exposed all of our weaknesses in how we communicate big messages. And we've got to learn to figure out what it is we're trying to communicate and then have a very structured way to vet that message so that we can be thorough, clear, consistent, and more transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're to our closing statements, and it's 2 minutes for each. We'll start with Mr. Rochelle.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. You all are concerned about the education in Evanston High School, and granted, this was never a really big election, but the fact that you're here shows you share a vested interest in education, much like everyone on this board. Again, I am a son of this community. I am the son of two Evanston educators. I bleed orange and blue. I really do. Some people may not understand what that means, but we had bumper stickers when I was here that said, "I bleed orange and blue." And I grew up seeing that, and I grew up believing that. And again, nothing gives me more pride than to be able to come back to this community and give to it, and give to every student who's here, to be able to serve on this board, to be able to help set policy, to make sure that students had the dynamic experience that I had here at Evanston High School. I want every student challenged. I want every student that can receive the challenge and expectation that I received at this high school. I want to hold the administration and everyone else involved accountable. I want to be held accountable as a board member. I think that is where you start with effective governance. And finally, communication. I want to be a part of this improvement in communication we're all speaking about. You know, very few of our ideas are very novel. It's the honest truth. We've all had some of the same ideas, and we've been shouting them out for the past couple of months. The difference is, I want to put legs to those. I want to take those ideas and see them implemented. I want to see them through, all the way through. And policy takes time. I've been involved in policy for 10 years, and I don't want to stop now. Thank you.
Mrs. Collington.
It's Colleton.
Collington, I'm sorry.
I don't have so much to say. I would like you to consider voting for me. I think I've done a good job. I love this work, and I'd like to continue doing it. I would like to cede my time to the lady at the rostrum to repeat the voting instructions for our time of voting and the available order. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Menace.
Thank you. The path to maintaining and improving the living standard of current and future generations of Evanston's kids passes directly through ETHS. The Board of Education, the administration, faculty, parents, and community members must unite behind a single goal, and that is to provide an excellent education for all students. So what does excellence look like at ETHS? We strive for excellence as we establish high expectations coupled with appropriate supports and encouragement for students to achieve to their greatest potential. We strive for excellence as we attempt to break down all barriers to student achievement, racial, economic, and social, and create more pathways to success. We strive for excellence as we value the learning experience of each and every student, from the most to the least advanced. We see excellence in rich experiential learning by students engaged in the arts, clubs, and athletics. We see excellence in our relentless pursuit of our goals and our unwillingness to settle for less. We see excellence in what our students accomplish, like our record-setting ACT scores, including 7 students with perfect scores. Like our 618 students that took over almost 1,400 AP tests with a rate of more than 70%, scoring 3, 4, or 5. Excellence is everywhere at ETHS. Our objectives must be to extend our reach and challenge our most advanced students to reach higher. And we must broaden and deepen excellence through high achievement by more and more students. It has been an honor and a privilege to have served on the District 202 board for the past 2 years. I ask for your vote, but more importantly, I ask for your support, any way you can give it, for ETHS. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Mr. Palm.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for coming. You know, as I talk to people in coffees and other gatherings, I find a great deal of cynicism in our community about education and about school boards. In particular, people say to me, well, you know, school board candidates, people always run for the school board and they say, I'm going to be for accountability and I'm going to demand data and I'm going to be responsive to the constituents. And then they say, well, sometimes it doesn't seem to pan out that way a lot of the time after they're elected. And so they say, well, you know, so how can you convince me that you mean this stuff? And all I can say is that I have a track record. You know, I've been on a board. I've been on the board of education. I once, when we were talking about what school the TWE program was going to be at, I once got 400 emails over a 3-week period, and I answered every single one of them. And, you know, I asked tough questions. I demanded the answers, and that's the kind of board member that I have been and that I will be, and I would very much like to have your support, and I look forward to being able to serve you in the years ahead.
Thank you. This concludes this evening's candidates forum. Please give our candidates a round of applause. Remember to vote on April 5th, and early voting is from March 14th through the 31st.